So I'm going to talk about something that's cropped up in Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. But what he's talking about here, Perisig is talking about here, is some of the stuff that went on in science and philosophy that was pretty significant around Poincaré's time. Poincaré, I don't know how to pronounce his name properly. When was he? When did he exist? He lived from 1854 to 1912, so we're coming up to 100 years after his death. And the most staggering thing about what I'm about to talk about is the fact that education system doesn't teach anybody this. And one of the things that occurs as a result is a complete misrepresentation of what the truth is, what science is, and what it's right to believe. The ultimate culmination of which is a bunch of people on Wikipedia who dictate to everybody what the truth is. A one-size-fits-all truth. You know? Well, let's see what science itself and philosophy has to say on this subject, about itself. This is what this is about. Basically, it came about because when we look at basic geometry, it turns out that basic geometry is founded upon assumptions which cannot be proved. And way back in the first quarter of the 19th century, in fact, a Hungarian and a Russian, Bolyai and Lobachevsky, established irrefutably that a proof of Euclid's fifth postulate is impossible. What was Euclid's fifth postulate? Euclid's fifth postulate is that if you have a point in space and a line going through it, there can only be one possible line that's parallel to another line. So if we take the line at the top of this screen, for example, and here's my point in space, and look, there's only one possible line that is parallel. Yeah, it seems to make sense, doesn't it? I don't think anybody has conducted an experiment on this and found any contradiction. But you know, that's not good enough. I remember being taught this, that with a proof, it's not good enough just to test and find that you can't find any case that breaks a proof. With a proof, you prove it for all cases, so there's no need to search, right? Well, it turns out you cannot prove this. They did it by engineering, or creating a whole system of geometry that made the assumption that in fact there were two lines that could be parallel to another line going through a point, right? And from this they ended up with a completely self-consistent system of geometry that could not be disproved, that was in complete conflict with Euclid's. Everything else about Euclid's stuff was kept exactly the same, just that one thing was changed, and the end result was a completely self-consistent belief system. I've got to call it a belief system, because in the end, if it's based on assumptions, it's a belief system, and it turns out the whole of science is based on assumptions. Well, you want a bit more of a convincing argument than that one, or case than that one? Well, once this door was opened, it didn't stop there. Okay? One could hardly expect the number of contradictory systems of unshakable scientific truth be limited to two. A German named Riemann appeared with another unshakable system of geometry which throws overboard not only Euclid's postulate, but also the first axiom, or assumption, which states that only one straight line can pass through 2 points. Yep, okay, that seems to make sense. 2 points, there's only one line that can pass through 2 points. I mean, unless the 2 points are on top of each other when all hell breaks loose, but if there are 2 points, yeah, well, we kind of see that that's the case, huh? I mean, it kind of would be nonsense to consider that anything else is possible. Hold on to your hats, because he created an entirely self-consistent and valid system of geometry that did not agree with that axiom. There's no internal contradiction, only an inconsistency, both with the Lobachevsky guy I was talking about before, and Euclidean geometries. Now, here's the interesting thing. According to the theory of relativity, right, guess which system of geometry is most appropriate to use? Yes, Riemann's. This is quite staggering, isn't it? Because everybody thought that Euclid was dead on. The truth. Except it wasn't true. So, to solve a problem of what is mathematical truth, okay, which is the same thing as what is scientific truth in the end, it's the same question, Poincaré said that we should first ask ourselves what is the nature of geometric axioms. Are they a synthetic a priori judgments? Oh, I'm not going to go through the arguments because there's a bit. I'm going to come straight to the point. Poincaré concluded that you can look this up yourself, but Poincaré concluded that the axioms of geometry are conventions. Our choice among all possible conventions is guided by experimental facts, but remains free and is limited only by the necessity of avoiding all contradiction. In other words, looking at this from a design point of view, there are two constraints to creating a scientific system of belief. One constraint is it must not be in conflict with experimental evidence, and the second part is it must not contradict itself. And it turns out that in the world, looking at the world we live in, you can create a whole host of these that actually satisfy those two things. And their shape is determined by the assumptions you make at the beginning. This is absolutely critical to understanding the point that the truth in the end boils down to what we believe to be true, or, to put it another way, what's most convenient, what serves our purpose. Poincaré went on to demonstrate the conventional nature of other concepts of science, such as space and time, showing that there isn't one way of measuring these entities that is more true than another. That which is generally adopted is only more convenient. Hopefully, people might start to get the point. I wish everybody got this point. I think the world would be a better place if everybody understood this, because we wouldn't have people fighting for their version of the truth and having wars for their version of the truth, or flaming each other on forums for their version of the truth, or just casting out whole sections of philosophical reasoning out of Wikipedia because it's not considered the truth. It's very important, and it's interesting that the education system glosses over the whole thing. But I'm going to just close on this one observation. Science itself has actually proven the fact that everything that it believes is based upon assumptions, and that the assumptions are made because they're convenient, and the systems of belief which are used, even within science itself, are the ones which are convenient for any particular problem you are trying to solve or thing that you are trying to explore. So let's have a look at two belief systems. If we expand it beyond just science, we have the Western scientific body of knowledge and understanding, which is a wonderful, magnificent piece of work, okay? And then you also have another magnificent, wonderful piece of work, okay? The Buddhist view of the world, okay? And the point is that which you choose depends on what you're trying to achieve. If you want to build a machine, or make an invention, or try to create technology, science is a good tool to use. Buddhism is not. But perhaps if you're seeking inner peace and tranquility and happiness in life, science isn't going to help you. It's not really a very good tool for that. Perhaps Buddhism would be a better tool. And so what we need to do is we need to accept that neither one nor the other is right. It's not a question of Euclidean geometry or Riemann geometry being right. It's not a question of Western scientific thinking or Buddhism. Either one, they are both there, and they're both convenient for certain purposes. And that's what I mean when I say the truth is a tool to use. I'm just going to end on one observation that was made by the fantastic genius James Burke, okay, in his TV series that he did, where at the end of which one was it? The Day the Universe Changed, in the last, I think it's the last episode of it, if I remember rightly. Basically making an observation, a comparison between, Western scientific thinking and Buddhism. And this is what he said. He said that basically both systems completely explain the world. Both systems are completely self-consistent. The difference is that Western scientific thinking changes all the time, but Buddhism doesn't. I think that's absolutely genius. I don't know about you. Because when you're seeking the truth, Which is more valid? The truth that changes all the time? Or the truth that is permanent?